Hey everyone, and welcome. After analyzing thousands of games, we've identified a bunch of concepts players in Diamond and below aren't using, causing them to lose more. Today, we've isolated our top 5 tricks that aren't being utilized. These tricks have been handpicked by a huge team of analysts and content creators, with the goal of helping you to significantly improve your lane phase. This is the first collaboration between Skillcapped and Mobalytics. As two platforms who share the same passion to maximize your ability to climb the ladder and improve, these are just the first of potentially many guides we'll collaborate on together. Alright, enough hype, let's jump into it. Our first trick is input buffering. Many of you may have heard of this term, but don't fully understand it and how it's a core skill to master. To put it simply, input buffering is when you press an attack or an ability but cannot use it yet due to being restricted by range. However, once within the necessary range, your attack or ability will automatically go off instantaneously, way too fast for players to react to it. Let us first break this down with an ability using Annie's Q as an example. Here, Annie is not using input buffering. Annie is playing on the boundaries of LeBlanc's W range while trying to land her Q. She ends up getting caught by how quick LeBlanc's QW trade is, and walks away with half her life before she can fight back. Now we can see Annie using input buffering to make sure she no longer has to react to LeBlanc's W, and instead casts her Q ability before LeBlanc even W's in. To do this, Annie's walking back and forth on the boundaries of LeBlanc's W range, baiting LeBlanc's W. But she's not clicking back and forth on the ground to achieve this movement like you might expect. When moving backwards, she clicks on the ground, but when moving forward, she's actually pressing Q onto LeBlanc, which moves her champion towards LeBlanc to enter the required range. This is called input buffering. The moment LeBlanc W's forward, she'll enter Annie's range, releasing Annie's Q instantly as it has already been pressed before LeBlanc uses W to enter her range. Now we have a basic understanding of input buffering for an ability. You should know that it also works for auto attacks. In this example, we can see Jinx immediately auto attack after flashing. This was really fast, and that's because she right-clicked before flashing. A subtle but huge difference. This mechanic has Jinx trying to auto-attack but cannot due to initially being restricted by range. But as she flashes into range, it leaves her opponent with no time to respond thanks to input buffering. A more interesting example is to combine an ability and an auto-attack with input buffering on Twisted Fate. As TF, going for the classic flash gold card doesn't always work out, as the enemy has time to respond and use their own escape or flash. However, by locking in gold card and right-clicking for the auto attack on his opponent before flashing, just like the Jinx, he instantly uses gold card as he flashes into range, leaving the opponent again with no time to respond with their own flash. Our second trick is for making ganks way easier for your jungler to land by manipulating your opponent's position in the lane. When moving in a certain way, you can actually encourage your opponent to move to the correct side of the lane where your jungler is approaching from. Let us explain. The whole point of players being in lane is because that's where the minion waves are. Players want gold, and they want experience from minions. For this reason, they stay near the waves to be in range for last hits and experience. Why are we stating the obvious? Well, if you position vertically to your opponent, this closes distance between the two of you. Their response to this isn't going to be walk back in a straight line out of range from a crucial minion wave. Instead, they'll position diagonally from you to maintain sufficient distance while farming minions and avoiding trading until they're ready to trade. So if you swap lane side to position vertically to your opponent, their natural reaction, unless they're looking to trade in that moment, is to play the opposite side of the wave to you, or diagonally, to keep a safe distance while staying near the minion wave. This allows you to manipulate their position. So, if your jungler is coming from the right and your opponent is playing to the left side of the lane, swap to the left side as this closes distance between you and your enemy. Then, if they swap to the right, they'll open themselves up to a gank. If they trade with you, you can use this to bait them into a gank anyway. In this example, we can see Ryze utilize this concept to bait Nautilus into a diagonal position, favoring the side of the lane his jungler is approaching from. Nautilus naturally isn't going to be laning vertically with the Rise, and they're able to pick up a kill from the gank. If Rise had positioned to the same side of the lane as his jungler, then Nautilus would position to the safe side of his lane. The one thing you want to be aware of when applying this concept is that if you're unaware of where the enemy jungler is, you're positioning further away from your own jungler when doing this. Doing this possibly opens yourself up to getting collapsed on in the exact same way that Nautilus did, essentially getting yourself hooked while fishing. Our third trick is for securing turret plates without the headache. Since turret plates' introduction to League of Legends, it's been a massive bait across all ELO brackets, with players constantly throwing their lead and or dying for that juicy 160 gold. We'll now teach you a simple way to claim your well-earned plates while maintaining your lead. As we can see here, Twisted Fate auto-attacks the tower and walks away. He makes it all the way to the river while still picking up a turret plate. This is a great visual for how far away you can actually be while still collecting your gold, though you'll usually need to rely on your minions knocking down plates and not your teammate. Now we all know we can be way further away than most players realize, but why does this really matter? Well, when knocking down plates, it usually means you're winning lane. If you stick around too long for the plate, you run the risk of your opponent returning from a recall and keeping you in lane before you can recall. This can easily cause you to throw your lead due to running out of resources, with the most likely outcome getting forced to base at a bad time. Bad recall timings can deny you at least an entire minion wave, which is worth around the same as a turret plate but also has experience, making the wave far more valuable. Not only can this cost you a minion wave, but would also give your opponent a free window to roam that they wouldn't otherwise have had, allowing them to kill your teammates while you're suddenly stuck in lane, all for that turret plate. When deciding to go for the plate, you can do it in a much safer and more efficient way thanks to the high radius we can utilize to pick up the gold. In this example, we see Akali avoiding all of the bad stuff that we just talked about. As soon as a Mumu shows up, she pulls back to safety to recall, while claiming the turret plate gold from distance due to her minions taking care of business. Even if there's no jungle threat and you don't need to get distance from the tower before your recall, then you'll still want to recall early. This is probably sounding really basic at this point, but we found time and time again during our research that players needlessly waste valuable time while securing their plates. You'll also want to keep in mind that if there's no jungle threat and your lane opponent is far away, you can just recall directly on the tower while your minions do the work. Here we see Lux recalling before breaking a plate, having her recall finish at least 4 seconds faster than the average player would if they kept auto-attacking. While 4 seconds may not sound like much, as we rewind 4 seconds here coming back from base, we can see where Lux would be standing if she didn't channel her recall efficiently, with her minions knocking down the plate. Across your games, this really adds up, following the same concept of being a faster shopper. Better recallers and shoppers get to lane faster, causing them to gain more experience and gold over time with their superior map presence. Our fourth trick is a basic and super easy one you can apply right away on any ranged champion to help avoid missing those cannons and tilting out of control. When you auto attack from range, you're essentially casting a projectile that has a travel time. This means you have to estimate how fast your auto attack will leave your champion and connect with a minion to secure the last hit based on where you're standing and how fast the minion is dying to your own minions. The travel time is something many players don't think about, especially when trying to last hit while having a large wave of your own. This makes things much more difficult, because the opposing minions start dying rapidly, making the estimate of timing your auto attack much more difficult. To deal with this, you simply want to move much closer to the minion you're trying to last hit, making it significantly easier to score the last hit as you're removing nearly all of the guesswork required for the travel time. This is typically fairly safe to do when you have big waves like this, even if your opponent is in lane, since you'll have the bigger wave to trade back with. Our fifth and final trick for this guide will be how to correctly position around your minion wave in every single mid lane matchup. In many of our guides, we have talked about trying to land AoE abilities on your opponent and the minion wave at the same time if your goal is to push the wave, doubling the efficiency of your ability. Then, if you're playing on the opposite side of the matchup, you want to avoid being inside your wave to avoid letting your opponent achieve this goal, and instead make them choose between wave clear and harass. If they choose to use their ability on the wave, you can then look for a trade. And if they go to trade with you, they use their push advantage to trade instead of pushing. But there's actually more to this which most players don't think about. For example, if you're up against a Xerath or an Ahri, they'll usually want to push the wave. Therefore, you may again think you should stand outside your wave to deny them from harassing and pushing at the same time. However, they both have high threat crowd control that can be blocked by minions, so if you stand outside your wave, you lose the protection of your minions. So what should you do? You'll want to position in a way where your melees are in front of you, but you're not next to your caster minions. This will typically mean positioning diagonally, making sure your melees are acting as a wall between you and your opponent. In doing this, your opponent still has to choose between focusing on harass or wave clear, without getting double the value from their ability. But wait, there's even more ways you can take this concept to achieve your goals. If you actually want your opponent to push, and they have AoE trading abilities, then you can just stand inside your wave while still trying to dodge. For example, at level 1, if you wanted Fizz to actually push into you at the start so that you can freeze, then stand inside your wave, as when they use E, they'll AoE your minions, causing their wave to push. This very concept can be applied to any scenario where your wave is pushing to your opponent when you don't want it to. This works consistently in Platinum and below, where most players autopilot their control over the wave. So, if your opponent has strong AoE trading like Ryze, Brand, Victor, Corki, who typically try to permashove or can use the wave to improve their trading, you want to stand outside of the wave. If your opponent likes to push, but have the skills that needed to be blocked by minions like Ahri and Xerath, you'll want to stay away from your casters and use your melees for protection. And if you want your opponent to push the wave, stand inside it and bait their AoE spells during trades. Alright, you've now learned the 5 tricks you didn't know for mid lane. Go ahead and practice them in your own games to take your climb to the next level.